Okay, part 4. Justice and preparing for the Interduchy tournament. Justice has said that he will be accompanying you for all of today, my lady. Lord Sylvester and Ferdinand may have ordered it, but are you certain you're fine with this? Riarda asked me first thing in the morning. She had a strict look on her face. Traugott and I were switching attendants for the day, and she was no doubt experiencing a sizable headache knowing that her own son was cross-dressing to serve as a female attendant. Let's see how convincing this is. Now, he can look the part, but does he sound the part? I'm a bit concerned about this myself, but the information Wolfried and I have simply isn't enough. We have no choice. Not to mention, Justice was recommended to me by Ferdinand himself. He has my full faith. Also, I hate to say this when Riarda is so worried, but I kind of want to see Dress's cross-dress. I kind of do as well. I can't wait to see that animated. Oh god, that's going to be freaking hilarious. Out of morbid curiosity, of course, in the same way one might want to see a horror movie. I would be spending my morning at the library, replenishing Schwartz and Weiss's mana. Then in the afternoon, I was going to meet with Anastasius. Justice was due to be accompanying me as my attendant, which meant Riarda would be serving Traugott. Justice always focuses on the work he likes doing most, so he's probably leaving dealing with Traugott for last. I'll have to make sure he's doing his attendant work properly, Riarda said, her dark eyes gleaming. There was no doubt in my mind that her check was going to be very thorough. After breakfast, we discussed the Interduchy tournament in the common room until the library opened. In Earth terms, the tournament was like a combination of a sports festival, a cultural festival, and a career fair, during which students would show off their skills to their guardians, the Obs, and sovereign royalty. Some people would spin their wheels, trying to prove themselves to their significant other's parents, while some professors used the occasion to publish their research. Despite it supposedly being a place for students, all in all, it was a time and place for all sorts of wacky happenings. For apprentice knights, the Interduchy tournament was all about the dinner, when they would compete to defeat babies produced by the professor's magic as quickly as possible. It was a stark competition of the tournament since you could tell who won at a glance, and it involved flashy battles during which everyone played distinct roles. There was a blatant disparity in power between the greater duchies, who were popular enough to choose the very best knights for their games, and the lesser duchies who were forced to send out all of their knights no matter their skill level. However, that too was part of a duchy's strength. Despite its size, Ehrenfest was much closer to being a lesser duchy than a middle duchy in terms of population. We had to compensate for our lack of manpower with individual skill. Though judging by what I had seen of our apprentices, we were doing a rather poor job, or rather, that is to say, we still had much room to grow. Our ranking would surely rise as our apprentices increased their mana through compression, studied more Fabies, and practiced coordinating in fights. Angelica and I will lead the fighting this year, with Lenore instructing us based on past tournament results and the weak points of whichever Fabies were up against, Cornelia said. Unfortunately, we still aren't yet capable of anything resembling proper coordination. Yep, that's going to take a bit. Angelica nodded. The games with Dunkelfelger had taught everyone the importance of working together, but practice had only just begun. We would probably do better next year, since Bonifacius had said that he would train the apprentices for me once spring came. Incidentally, I plan to give Angriff's blessing to the apprentices before the dinner game, but would that be considered cheap or unfair, I asked. Your blessings will be a key part of our strategy, Lenore replied. There is nothing more confidence-inducing than you blessing our victory in the dormitory before we leave. Her implication that it was something best done out of sight of the other duchies was enough for me to guess it was on the darker side of being morally gray. Well, given that Dunkelfelger already calls me a scheming trickster, I suppose it's fine. For apprentice scholars, the tournament was a place to announce their research on magic tools, improve potion recipes, and other such inventions. One would sell their technology to the sovereignty with the compiled research results and completed products in hand. Ferdinand had earned a literal fortune announcing his original magic tools here and selling them to the sovereignty. Ever since his graduation, those from Ehrenfest had considered this part of the tournament little more than a place for Herscher to announce her research results. Hartmut, will you be announcing anything, I asked? You are my subject of study at the moment, Lady Rosamine, but I currently lack any conclusions worth announcing. Is it just me, or was that response genuinely terrifying? To be more precise, I am researching the differences between the magecraft we learned in the Royal Academy and the blessings and divine protection you use, Lady Rosamine. In the Royal Academy, we learned to use the divine protection of the gods, Only upon acquiring our staffs, but you can use them even without one, correct? Yes. Do we not all give blessings during our greetings? I replied. Even without a staff, everyone can perform blessings using the face stones for expelling mana they received during their baptism ceremonies. Hartmut widened his orange eyes. I'm referring not to blessings that simply expel mana, but to prayers made in the names of a god that carry potent divine protection. These are separate things in my eyes, but I see now that they are the same to you. There was the joy of discovery in his voice, and this information was just as new to me. Greetings, prayers in the temple, and requests for divine protection all came from saying the names of gods and expelling mana. As far as I was concerned, they were all just prayers dedicated to the gods. But I guess there are minor differences. Like when I feel the mana getting sucked out of me on its own, versus when I actually used it need to work to push it out. I don't really get it, so I'm just going to stop thinking now. In any case, I would like for you to work on some more productive research, Hartmut. I am planning to research something more publishable next year. My research on you will likely take more than a lifetime, so I would like to begin more thoroughly following my graduation, Hartmut said, his smiling eyes locked on me. No, don't make me your life's work. Please, no. Oh, dear Lord Almighty, what is he going to think if he was to ever figure out her secret about her being from another world? Oh, this would turn everything of his research on its head. Lady Rosamund, Feline said, as I cradled my head. I just remembered. Professor Herscher's announcement this year will be centered around her research on Schwartz and Weiss. The outfits had thus far required a great deal of research, and everyone from Ehrenfest was having to work together in order to make them. For these reasons, Herscher decided to make them her main focus. That must be why she was so enthusiastic about getting those documents from Lord Ferdinand, Feline continued, her voice tinged with awe. I was so surprised by her reaction yesterday. Upon being informed of my return, Herscher had burst into the dormitory again like a cannonball. She had then sped right up to me with a look intense enough to bore holes into the wall, hardly the expression one would expect from a teacher retrieving packages from her old disciple. Justice has been the one to step forward and deal with Herscher, just as he had proposed. He had used the research on Schwartz and Weiss as a bargaining chip to get her to refuse the Dunkelfelger match for us, deliberately emphasizing that I was not to be personally challenged again. He had then handed her only half the documents, stating that he would deliver the second half once the cancellation is confirmed. Herscher had, of course, acted immediately, and she was back to collect the rest before even a single bell had passed. She had rushed in like a hurricane and then left just as quickly. I never would have thought Professor Herscher could talk Professor Roffin down so extremely quickly. Yesterday I learned she has a talent for something other than research, Hartmut muttered in a daze. Everyone else nodded in solemn agreement. Seriously, will people like Sylvester and Herscher? Ehrenfest culture could be defined as weirdos motivated only by their primary interest rampaging around. When will they learn to calm down a little? Good grief. To attendants, the Interduchy tournament was a place to push trends and lavish guests with excellent hospitality. Up until now, Ehrenfest had received almost no visitors outside of the students' own guardians, without anything that was new or garnered much interest. Other duchies wouldn't bother to come over. The Interduchy tournament wasn't very long overall, so it was a matter of course that people and attention would be centered around the more fascinating things. Even the students' guardians and the archducal couple would immediately leave for other duchies to socialize. Nobody would come to them, so they had to actively venture out. Brunhilde had found it exceedingly frustrating that she had honed her hosting skills to such an incredible degree, but had never had the chance to actually show them off. This year, Ehrenfest had garnered much attention with its Rinsham, hairpins, pound cake, and plant paper. Brunhilde was also putting her all into polishing up the girls by cleaning their hair with Rinsham, exactly as we had done before the advancement ceremony. There was still some concerns, however. For one, Laisletta was worried that we didn't know how many visitors would be coming, a problem born from all the new trends and the fact that both Wolverine and I were here. Justice had apparently told her that those of us from Ehrenfest would need to prepare to the absolute best of our abilities, unlike during previous years. It was good that our students were getting a chance to prove their skills, but it ran the risk of things becoming too much for them to handle, which can make things even worse than usual. Oh, and who was that? I asked. A woman I didn't recognize had suddenly entered the common room. She looked a lot like Riarda, but since the actual Riarda was behind me, it had to be someone else. As I wondered who, I noticed Traga with a pathetic look on his face, seeming like he wanted to be anywhere else. Oh no, is this Justice? I turned around on instinct and saw that Riarda was wearing an exceedingly displeased grimace. Oh snap! It's cross-dressing Justice. Holy cow, he totally looks like a refined middle-aged lady right now. He advanced slowly, receiving suspicious looks from all those in the common room, and then knelt gracefully before me. No longer were there any traces of Justice, by whom by now I knew well. Instead, there was a woman who looked much like Riarda, albeit middle-aged. The winter cold meant everyone was wearing clothes that covered the neck, and his Adam's apple was completely hidden away. His hands were also hidden beneath gloves, which meant the only area where his skin was exposed was his face. Justice already had a bit of an androgynous face, so it had taken just a little makeup to completely change how it looked. His shoulders were slightly broader than Riarda's, maybe due to the layers of clothing he had on, but it was actually scary how normal it all seemed. He must have dyed his hair too. It was now brown instead of gray. My apologies for the wait. How is it, milady? You can change your voice, Justice? One need only alter how they speak. As it turned out, he could make a feminine voice just by changing how he spoke a little. Justice, you have my full support on this one. Keep it up, dude. And either due to him having observed the mannerisms of women, practiced a lot himself, or cross-dressed all the time, it was very believable indeed. Perhaps I was praising him too highly, but he reminded me of the male actors playing women in no theater or kabuki who, through rigid practice and careful attention to their every move, can end up more feminine than the actual girls. If you take no issue with this state of dress, I would like to accompany you to your tea party for girls, Justice said. That is fine, provided that you do not mind remaining dressed like that for the entire day. Certainly not. Now I must ask that you call me Gudrun when I am dressed like this. Gudrun, I repeated, tilting my head just as Trogget let out a pained choke. Uncle, please, do not use mother's name when dressed like that. Are there not a variety of female names similar to your own, like Justine or Justina? Best to not give any hints. Goodness, Trogget, must you panic so? Do calm down. Only a shallow-minded fool would use a fake name so easily connected to the real one. That you are one, such fool is why your life is but a string of failures, Justice said with a giggle. He apparently looked just like Trogget's mother, Gudrun, when he cross-dressed. Those wearing a clear grimace rather than looks of surprise were probably those who knew Gudrun personally. Oh, I can't wait to see this stuff animated. This is going to be hilarious. This is going to be so good. Oh yeah, Trogget is Justice's nephew. Oh yeah, which makes this whole thing even more worse for him. Oh, I love it. I love this. Trogget cradled his head, weeping for mercy as he was forced to endure having his cross-dressing uncle as his attendant. The looks of judgment and scorn he had previously been receiving from the others steadily became conflicted stares of sympathy. No words were spoken, but it was clear how many people were feeling bad for him. Wait, did Justice deliberately walk into the common room like this to earn Trogget some sympathy? No, surely not. Justice wouldn't go that far for him. Or maybe he's also trying to embarrass him too. That would also be a good way to do it. Humiliation. Upon seeing Justice retain his feminine grace, even while dealing with Trogget's emotional breakdown, Hartman looked at me with the troubled expression of someone who had been given an impossible task. Lady Rosemine, is it expected for scholars serving as retainers to learn to cross-dress? I truly apologize, but I do not have a talent for such an art. If you insist that I learn, however, I will dedicate my best efforts to doing so. No, you don't have to. You don't have to, though Justice probably think it's best. I had told him to learn from Justice, but that certainly didn't mean I expected him to cross-dress. I immediately rejected the idea. You do not need to learn to cross-dress, Hartman. There are surely many other ways to obtain this information you want, such as training a female assistant scholar, or cooperating with others. Excuse me. Cross-dressing is merely an interest of Justice's, and not a talent I see in you. The apprentice scholars all seemed visibly relieved to hear my explanation. Justice, on the other hand, appeared somewhat dissatisfied. This is no interest of mine, milady. It is simply the most effective method for achieving my goals, he said. Would you not agree that it is most reliable to gather information with one's own eyes and ears? Is it really that effective? Hartman asked. Hartman, no! Don't let him corrupt you, I cried, already sensing the danger as Hartman began to look contemplative. No, Hartman! No. Though if you have Justice helping you with that, I can imagine it would be very decent at it, maybe? Because, this is justice we're talking about here. This guy can pull off being a lady without even being anyone suspecting that he's a guy. Unless you know him personally. So you might have the best teacher for that, if you wanted to actually do that. Despite my efforts, however, Justice stopped me with a smile and then began to profess the glorious practicality of cross-dressing to not just Hartmut, but the entire student body. Milady, he is not being corrupted. He is simply being educated so that he can make an informed decision. If one considers how information obtained personally is leagues more reliable than information obtained through others, then cross-dressing is a skill that anyone should dedicate. No, shut your trap, Justice, Riarda yelled. I will not let you keep blabbering such nonsense. And you will not drag Artelie's precious son down with you. He has such a bright future ahead of him. Thank you, Riarda. Ooh, we get to see it. I want to see it. Oh, there's Hartmut, there's Riarda, there's... Oh, Justice. You cleaned up good. You cleaned up good as a girl. Justice winced when his own mother unleashed her fury on him. She had certainly contained her rage for as long as possible since she was serving as my attendant, but she finally lost her patience, and so began her enraged lecture. On the outside, Justice looked a lot like his mother, so one could easily have assumed there were two Riardas present, except one now wore the stern expression of a mother, and the other the sullen look of a boy who had gotten caught midway through a prank. The whole situation was messing with my head. There is nothing I dislike more than being forced to witness this, Riarda shouted. I have only tolerated you working for Milady because Ferdinand and Ob Ehrenfest ordered it. I have been given explicit permission to send you back home if at any point you risk damaging Ehrenfest's reputation with your antics. Do not forget that. Now do I make myself clear? Of course, Mother. Thanks to Riarda stopping Justice, we could finally leave for the library. Wait, was that... What did Hartmut look like? Okay. Riarda and Traga saw us off, the former looking worried and the latter gripping his stomach in agony as I departed with certainly not Justice in disguise, Gudrun, and my retainers. This is going to be my first time seeing Schwartz and Weiss in a while. Milady, you're here! Welcome back, Milady! Schwartz and Weiss towered over and then began hopping circles around me chanting welcome over and over again. It was heartwarming to receive such an enthusiastic greeting. I gazed around the library as I stroked the face stones on their foreheads to replenish their mana. There were more gaps in the bookshelves than I remembered. In fact, they practically filled with holes. The bookshelves certainly look lonely right now, Professor Solange, I observed. Welcome back, Lady Rosemine. That would be because final exams are approaching. Everyone is quite desperate. The shelves may seem even much emptier than usual, but the carols more than make up for it. As Solange had said, the library was filled with visitors. It was quite unlike what I was used to. Nobody was engaged in conversation, but the waves of sound produced as the students moved about was unceasing. The study resources and carols were apparently being reserved far more often than usual. Those who hadn't yet completed their exams were finding themselves driven by fear as those around them steadily began to finish. The prickly tension one felt before a test was clear in the air. Nobody here was relaxed. I might recommend you spend today reading in your own chamber, Solange said. In truth, I have been absent from the Royal Academy for so long that I must spend all my time socializing from now until the graduation ceremony. I would much rather read at my leisure in the library, but it seems I will simply have no opportunity to do so. Oh my, socializing is quite an important learning experience in the Royal Academy. I am sure you will do just fine, Solange said with a refined chuckle. Hearing this, Gudrun tilted his head and placed a thoughtful hand on his cheek. I believe you will have an opportunity to read once we have finished your socializing for the day, he said to me. Shall we borrow a book? Really, Gudrun, I explained. Justice is a weirdo, but he is a good man, a good, competent man. As if sensing my rising affection for him, Gudrun gave a small smirk. I am aware that small rewards are key to keeping you motivated, milady. Indeed they are. Shall we search for a book at once? There is no time for that. Schwartz, Weiss, please fetch and borrow for us a book that milady has not read before, Gudrun said, clasping my shoulder so that I couldn't escape. His gloves made his hands look feminine, but they were bumpy and rough, and he gripped with the unmistakable strength of a man. It was certainly more than I had come to expect from Riarda. I watched as Schwartz and Weiss began to toddle away. Okay, one book. We'll borrow. I waited for the two Shumails to finish going through the book-borrowing process and then returned to the dormitory, feeling elated. The sight of Gudrun walking along in a feminine manner reminded me of something he had told me in the past. Gudrun, where is the Forbidden Archive, I asked. You mentioned it to me in the past, did you not? He had specifically mentioned to keep me awake during the night of Shitsaria. Much had changed with the libraries and the books, but surely the archive itself still existed. More than likely. Perhaps I'd gone from being forbidden to being open to all, but that didn't make a difference to me. I've never heard of such a thing. Is it in the Royal Academy? One of my retainers asked. They were intrigued by the mystery of the archive, but Gudrun simply put on a peaceful smile and shook his head. I do not know where it is. Its existence was mentioned to me by the librarian who served while I was attending the academy. He said there exists a book storage room that can be opened only by royalty. Wait, what? If only royalty can open it, that means I can't go inside, I exclaimed. It was just too cruel. He had gotten my hopes up for nothing. Yeah, that sucks. Gudrun widened his eyes as I puffed out my cheeks. Did you intend to enter that which is literally referred to as the Forbidden Archive? Do you know what forbidden means? If there are books in there, it is only natural that I will desire to read them. I cannot imagine there are many who would think the same, Gudrun said again, tilting his head in confusion. I truly couldn't believe it. Justice would cross-dress and mingle with commoners to get the information he wanted, but he was looking at me like I was the weird one. How did he not empathize with me here? Surely he wanted to know what books were in that room, too. Are you not curious about what books are in the Forbidden Archive and what is written within them? I would certainly like to know, but any normal person would give up on ever going inside the moment they learn that only royalty can enter. It is not like a tea party, which is reasonably simple to sneak into, Gudrun said, entirely pretending to be a normal person. I glared at him. Gudrun, you speak as though I am not normal. Milady, please, you have no self-awareness, Gudrun asked, looking at me with equal parts amusement and genuine concern. I couldn't help but falter. I wasn't completely blind to my own shortcomings. I am aware I am a bit unusual. That is a relief, Gudrun said with a smile, while Cornelius let out a shocked, just a bit? What? I'm just a bit weird, right? No, you're very weird. You are on the level of Justice and probably Sylvester in weird. In your own way. Meeting with the prince. Fifth bell rang. It was time for us to meet with Anastasius, and so we picked up the various gifts that Riarda had prepared and started on our way. Of course, it was my attendants who were doing the actual carrying. My job was to put my all into my walking. I focused on making sure each step I took exuded the utmost grace, all while spreading out my stamina so that I wouldn't start feeling sick. Walking around the Royal Academy was something that I struggled with. Gudrun, did Ferdinand also receive invitations from royalty when he was a student? I asked. Indeed, many times. Though he received invitations from both a prince and a princess, as they would summon him to play Harpspiel, Gudrun went on to explain that Ferdinand had been invited to a tea party with the music professors, like she did, during which he had earned the favor of a princess. Had he not been an Archduke candidate, she would have apparently wanted to make him her personal musician. I see everyone goes through the same things here. Milady, allow me to correct what seems to be a misunderstanding. Not everyone experiences being invited to the private room of royalty. There was exasperation in Gudrun's voice, but surely it wasn't that rare. Both Ferdinand and I had been invited, and judging by what Anastasius had said, Eglantine was invited all the time. That's only 3 instances in probably, I don't know how long in the Royal Academy. So, yeah. I think I will use this opportunity to ask Prince Anastasius about the Forbidden Archive. If he is familiar with its location, perhaps he will open it for me, I mused aloud, having had the genius idea to ask royalty to open the room that could only be opened by royalty. Gudrun, however, stopped me with a stunned expression. Please do not make such a request, milady. Why not? I asked, tilting my head to one side. Is that not the fastest solution, considering that only royalty can open the room? Gudrun faltered at a momentary loss for words, and then let out a heavy sigh. Lady Rosemine. The Forbidden Archive is a mystery of the Royal Academy. It is a rumor of uncertain veracity or origin, and thus unsuitable for the ears of royalty. So it's one of the 7 mysteries of the Academy. 7? What are the other 6 in your opinion? Back in Japan, it was traditionally said that every school has 7 mysteries. I don't know why that was, or what the mysteries might be in this case. I wouldn't know, but you must have some ideas, Gudrun. I can recall perhaps 20 mysteries related to the Royal Academy. 20? That sure is a lot. The mysteries develop over time as students introduce new ones for amusement. Similar ones become fused together, and existing ones quickly morph into something else entirely. There is the goddess statue that dances in the night of the graduation ceremony, the gazebo where the goddess of time plays tricks, the Gwendolyn pieces that begin playing games of dinner. Have you not all not heard of these? Gudrun asked, counting them on his fingers. Cornelius and the others exchanged glances before shaking their heads. If not even the oldest students were familiar with these mysteries, they must not have been topics that came up all too often. Gudrun widened his eyes at that, then he muttered, "Perhaps the impacts of the Civil War are being felt here as well." "Welcome, Lady Rosamine. I see you are looking well today," said Anastasius' head attendant, Oswin. He gave a relieved smile upon seeing my face, which reminded me I hadn't seen him since my collapse, and my response to their well wishes had noted only that I was returning to Ehrenfest. The reason for my sudden departure was a summons, but from an outside perspective, it would seem that I had returned due to my poor health. After my meeting with the prince, Oswald must have been concerned about me this entire time. I am fine now. My apologies for having worried you all. Osmond guided me to the guest parlor where Anastasius was waiting. The prince was already seated, and he immediately gestured for me to sit down as well. Wait, what? Is it just me, or is the prince all shiny now? Anastasius' blonde hair had always been luxurious, but now it looked especially silky. Is he using the red sham? I couldn't help but wonder whether Eglantine had allowed him to use some of her Rinsham. His attitude had also changed completely. Rather than seeming uneasily impatient, he sat calmly in place, positively brimming with confidence. It was such a stark contrast that for a second I thought he was a different person with the same face. "Took you long enough," the prince said. "I've been waiting. My apologies, I must say, however, that your wait has been worth it. The hairpin for Eglantine is our finest one yet." I had thought he would demand to see it at once, but his gray eyes instead crinkled in a pleased smile. He glanced at our attendants as they went through the gift-giving process. "Did something happen while I was away?" I asked. "By which you mean—" "Oh, you just seem to be carrying yourself quite differently, so I couldn't help but wonder if your relationship with Lady Eglantine has progressed," I asked. I said I couldn't help but think of the old saying that if you didn't see a man for 3 days, you'd come back to find an entirely different person. The moment I said that, Anastasius' self-assured attitude fell apart into something more casual. "What, you're curious? I see even the youngest-looking of girls are still fond of romance. It was thanks to your advice that the situation changed so suddenly, so perhaps I can tell you a bit of what happened." "No, thanks. I feel like you're gearing up for a boring ramble." That was what I wanted to say, but I held my tongue. Anastasius' gray eyes were sparkling as he silently pressured me to ask for more details. Gudrun was likewise signaling for me to request more information. I had no choice but to read the mood. "I am ever so curious." "Then I will tell you. However, I can disclose only a portion of the full story. There is much which must be kept private," Anastasius said with a proud grin. Despite his words, however, it was clear on his face that he desperately wanted to tell me everything, every little detail. "I spoke with Eglantine alone after our meeting. I took heed of your advice and spoke frankly so that she could understand my true wish and I could understand hers. Upon hearing her wish, Anastasius had used the following Earth days and all the spare time he had from his finished classes to rush between the royal castle and Klassenburg. He was dead set on making his dream come true, or her dream come true. I cannot say much on the information, as the information is not yet public, but Eglantine rejoiced. It was my first time seeing such a smile, and its beauty made her truly indistinguishable from the goddess of light," Anastasius said, breaking into a smile himself. There was a particular kindness to his expression that I had never seen from him before. I could feel his love for Eglantine radiating from his every pore, and to be honest, I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to hear any more of his lovey-dovey garbage from him. "So your efforts bore fruit," I summarized, "and you secured the right to escort Lady Eglantine with aplomb?" "Correct. The hardest part was convincing the previous Isle of Klassenburg. I needed to visit him with Eglantine countless times, and— apologies, I cannot give the details. And I don't want to hear them." Anastasius clearly desperately wanted to tell someone else his story, but I was fine just knowing he was going to escort Eglantine. The hairpin was going to see use, and assuming the relationship ended up a success, Ehrenfest would surely benefit to some degree. "Now then, please behold the hairpin made for Lady Eglantine. My personal hairpin craftswoman put her all into making this our best one yet. I said, forcibly changing the subject and gesturing for Gudrun with my eyes. He placed a box on the table without a word, while I delicately opened and turned so that Anastasius could see the hairpin inside. "This is the Corelli hairpin. I believe it will suit Lady Eglantine perfectly, but does it meet your expectations?" The hairpin was made in the image of a Corelli, a flower Eglantine liked, which was similar in appearance to a lily. The large petals were adorned with tiny white flowers and green plants to symbolize the coming of spring. Decorative lace made the ornament appear even fancier and more elaborate, and the colors chosen were intended to completely complement the gadoled red dress I had been told Eglantine was going to wear to her graduation. The center of the flower was an orangey shade of red, with the petals gradually becoming redder the further out you went. Anastasius plucked the hairpin from the box and carefully began to look it over. There was a deadly seriousness to express his narrowed eyes as he examined the ornament from every angle. Had Thule managed to meet the standards of royalty? I swallowed hard as I nervously awaited his judgment. This is much more extravagant than your hairpin, he observed. My hairpins are for daily use. Their style differs from those meant to be worn with formal attire at celebratory events such as the graduation ceremony when one comes of age. Furthermore, a hairpin such as this would not suit me. Corrales are extravagant that I would be outshone. This is a hairpin designed only for Lady Eglantine. Have you deemed it worthy? Yes, this hairpin will do a splendid job at drawing out her beauty, Anastasia said with a satisfied nod. I couldn't help but give a broad smile, knowing that such praise had come from royalty. Yes, Thule, the prince thinks your hair work is splendid. That's my angel for you. I want to brag to everyone. You can't, though. I clenched my fist beneath the table as I tried to contain my swelling excitement, but it seemed that my attempt wasn't quite enough. Anastasia fixed me with a glare and said, "Contain your emotions." I frantically placed my hands over my cheeks, but my smile continued to grow nonetheless. Can't blame her, though. Osmond returned the hairpin to its box, delicately closed the lid, and then carried it away. Gudrun then stepped forward, as if to replace him, and set down the sheet music. He gestured with his eyes for me to control myself, and that finally calmed my excitement. "What shall you do with the song dedicated to the goddess of light?" I asked. "I do believe it would be wiser for you to present it to her yourself rather than through me, but the choice is yours." "I would agree. As initially planned, I shall buy it. Oswin?" Oswald stepped forward again and began the purchase with Gudrun, while Anastasius looked over the sheets and nodded. Ferdinand and Rosina had arranged the song into something truly beautiful, so I expected that it would sell without issue. Once the transaction was complete, we went out to discuss Eglantine's cuteness and some trivial affairs related to the Royal Academy. Thinking that was it, I moved to bring the meeting to a close, only for Gudrun to interrupt me with a cough. Am I forgetting something? With his hand hidden partially behind his skirt, Gudrun extended 2 fingers as if making a peace sign, then curled them to resemble flapping ears. "Schwarzen Weiss!" It was only then that I remembered. I had been asked to consult the prince about whether it would be acceptable to publish research on the library magic tools at the Interduchy tournament. The request had completely slipped my mind. Prince Anastasius, if you don't mind, I have one last question. Ehrenfest scholars would like to publish research on Schwartz and Weiss during this year's Interduchy tournament. Would that be acceptable considering they are the heirlooms of royalty? Of course, that should be fine. Were any discoveries made? Heck if I know. I opened my mouth about to say just that, but then I shuddered again and slowly shook my head. I'm afraid you will need to ask Professor Herscher for details. I have only just returned from Ehrenfest, and I have not yet seen all the documents myself. Herscher again, Ehrenfest would do well to have its students participate in the tournament, too, not just its dorm supervisor, he said with a clear exasperation, and he was totally right. I had no rebuttal. I will strive to ensure that our students have stunning research to publish next year. I shall wait and see, though my expectations are not high. And with that, our meeting came to an end. I must say, milady, that meeting alone was enough for me to understand the many woes you bring to Lord Ferdinand, Gudrun said, rubbing his temples as soon as we returned to the dorm. I could feel my stomach turn as I waited to hear what you would say to the prince. Not only were you completely unpredictable, you even forgot many of the things we discussed moments prior to leaving the dormitory. Now I truly empathize with why Lord Ferdinand said you should be kept isolated from the other duchies and your socializing kept to a minimum. His relief was so unmistakable that it was honestly freaking me out. Gudrun, am I truly that bad at socializing? Your largest problem is that you seem competent at first glance. The majority of your answers and questions were quite fine, but you attempted to ask royalty about the Forbidden Archive and managed to forget advice you had received just moments prior. Wait, when did she ask that? I don't remember her asking that. I guess that was just some of the other stuff. I feel that your mistakes are always severe and fatal. There is no middle ground. And thus your retainers must be exceedingly careful. I will be writing a report to Ehrenfest as Mother attends to you, and I will propose that Lord Ferdinand personally train your retainers. Bonifacius had already agreed to train the apprentice knights, and now there was a chance that Ferdinand was going to train all my retainers. They recoiled at the thought and stiffened. They knew all too well the legends that followed the current high priest. Milady, the responses to your tea party invitations have arrived, Friarda said, holding a great bundle of letters in her hands. A discussion room had already been set aside for us, so we moved there at once to begin checking the replies. It seemed that we were going to hold a tea party with every single duchy in attendance. Given space constraints, we were limiting attendance to 1 representative per duchy, but since each representative would need to bring with them attendants and guard knights, there was still going to be quite an enormous crowd. Can we actually handle this many people? Cornelius asked, worried. Brunhilde's amber eyes shone with a fierce light. Let us consider this a prologue to the Interduchy tournament. There will be no limit to the number of people there, and we are also bound to encounter the Archducal couple and other nobles from other duchies. I do believe Lord Justice was correct when he said that no amount of preparation will be enough. But is there not a limit to how much our kitchen can produce? What shall we do about that? Laisletta asked. I pondered her question for a moment. Let us send a letter to Ehrenfest requesting access to the castle's kitchens the day before the Interduchy tournament, and placing orders with the pound cake selling Offmer Company. We can have the food delivered as luggage. We would need to send this letter to Sylvester and the others sooner rather than later. There was no getting around the fact that the resources currently being sent to the Royal Academy weren't enough to meet our upcoming needs. I decided to leave decisions on the number of orders and the budgeting for them to my attendants, instead thinking about how we could handle the people once they actually arrived. While we were preparing for the large-scale tea party, I received a summons from Eglantine. She wanted me to teach her how to put on the hairpin that Anastasius had gifted her, so there was no way for me to refuse. Because Anastasius had his eye on Eglantine, men were forbidden from attending her tea parties. This meant that Hartman and Cornelius would need to stay behind, while Justice would be accompanying me as Gudrun. Upon hearing this, Hartman began to deeply contemplate something. Please, oh gods, steer Hartman away from the dark side. Oh dear Lord, I can't wait to see this. Is he actually going to do it? I do apologize for inviting you during such busy times, but it was just essential that I asked before the graduation ceremony. Eglantine said, welcoming me with a radiant smile. At the risk of sounding like Anastasia, she truly was beautiful enough to be mistaken for the goddess of light. She had always been a sight to behold, but now she was invincible, propelled forward by the blissful confidence unique to girls who were in love and who were receiving love in return. I was truly overjoyed to receive such a splendid hairpin, though I must say I am concerned that Prince Anastasius has forced unreasonable demands on you once again. It seemed that Eglantine, in all her kindness, was worried about royalty dragging me around. I smiled and rejected the idea. This was something I had suggested on my own to cheer him up, not something he had forced on me. I advised him to order the hairpin. It was clear to me how well one would suit you, Lady Eglantine. Oh my, might I ask you to teach me how it should be worn then? Eglantine had put on the dress she planned to wear at her graduation, no doubt wanting to see for herself whether the colors matched. How do I look? She asked. Stunning. I speak with all seriousness when I say that you would steal the heart of not just Prince Anastasius, but all men who gaze upon you. Her beautiful golden hair was bound up like that of an adult woman, revealing the pale skin of her neck that was so nicely brought out the red in her dress. Her long and gorgeously embroidered sleeves shook ever so slightly as she experimentally touched her nape. She wasn't used to not feeling her hair brushing against it. Is that the Klassenberg crest? I asked, looking at the embroidery. Indeed, my grandfather, or rather my adoptive father, was quite fussy about the design. I can imagine. You are his granddaughter and adoptive daughter, and this is the dress for your coming-of-age ceremony. It's only natural that he has invested in every detail. And rest assured, your own stunning beauty is not overshadowed by the beauty of your outfit. It suits you perfectly. As I spoke, my attendants taught Eglantine how to put in the hairpin. It was like the large red flowers blooming from her glossy, rinsham-colored cleansed hair, with the lively greens reminding me of spring. All the colors made Eglantine's golden hair look even more gorgeous. Oh my, how splendid! It looks wonderful on you, milady. The attendants gave enthusiastic approval as well. Considering how impressed they sounded, it was easy to guess that Eglantine would draw a lot of attention to her graduation ceremony. Eglantine joyfully expressed her thanks for the praise. She then turned back to look at me while touching the hairpin. Lady Rosamund, is this hairpin safe to wear while whirling? I would suggest experimenting. If you find it interfering with your whirling, then you will need to adjust its position or change how your hair is braided. I usually insert my hairpins from above so that they remain in place even during dedication whirl practice. There is a risk it might fall out if stuck in from the side. Eglantine gracefully raised her hands and started to whirl, humming a quiet rhythm to herself. Her billowing sleeves filled with air as she spun, fluttering through the air as though they had minds of their own. The loose strands of hair dangling on either side of her hair gleamed as they caught the light, and the subtle smile that crept onto her face showed just how much she loved to whirl. It seems that things will be just fine, she eventually concluded with a content smile. I was likewise satisfied, having been able to watch Eglantine whirl free of charge. I was a big fan of her dedication whirls. Once we had finished celebrating the hairpin together, I stealthily sold Eglantine the jar of Rinsham I had brought, thereby completing everything I had planned to do during this meeting. I victoriously balled up my fist, having remembered to do everything I had been told to do this time, only for her to bring out 2 sound-blocking magic tools. Oh. May we speak a bit more with these? She asked. Of course, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest as I gripped the tool. Who knew what she was going to say? It is thanks to you, Lady Rosemine, that I can allow Prince Anastasius to escort me. I am told that he put forth great effort to make it a reality. There is no doubting that he truly did pour his all into this. He spoke with the king, Prince Sigiswald, and even my grandfather countless times, traveling between them with no rest to speak of. This determination won my affection more than any sweet nothings. You're really going to use sound-blocking magic tools just to make me listen to you brag about your boyfriend? It seemed the sight of Anastasius passionately working to convince the former Ob Klausenberg had won Eglintine's heart more than anything. Her cheeks flushed, and her eyes watered slightly as she spoke, the overflowing aura of a young girl in love making her even more lovely and attractive. However, perhaps due to my lack of imagination, I can only imagine Anastasius arguing with a stubborn old man. It was certainly disappointing. No, here we have basically the most handsome man and the most beautiful woman possible, but it barely feels like a fairy tale romance at all. My heart is dead. Still, Eglintine's smile was radiating happiness, and that was enough for me. She looked much more wonderful now than when she had been agonizing over whether she would become the catalyst for another war. I cannot say much more, as our future will be announced during the upcoming Archduke Conference, but you are undoubtedly the reason that things are going so well, Lady Rosemine. I am truly grateful for all you have done, Eglantine said. I am just glad to see you happy, I replied with a smile, only for Eglantine's own smile to cloud over a little. Lady Rosemine, would you still celebrate our union, knowing it might distance us from the throne, she asked. I recalled my guardians yelling at me about how dangerous problems with the throne were, in which case this distancing could mean only good things for me. Of course, I replied, my chest confidently puffed out. I have chosen to be your ally, Lady Eglantine. You being distanced from the throne changes nothing. Eglantine fell silent, so shocked she was truly at a loss for words. Lady Eglantine? Is something the matter? Oh no, I just never expected you to give such a reply. Will your Ob not scold you for speaking from your heart? Do the powers of Ehrenfest not wish to establish connections to the throne? Ehrenfest is a neutral duchy that did not side with either faction to begin with, so in truth I was scolded simply for getting involved with matters of his succession at all. Oh my, Eglantine exclaimed with a giggle. Her expression was no longer clouded over. Rather, her peaceful smile from before had now returned. You truly are the saint of Ehrenfest, Rosemine. I feel as though you have saved me. If my actions have helped in the least bit, I am honored to have been of service, I replied on instinct. Huh? Wait, did I actually do anything? I kept my confusion to myself, allowing Eglantine to continue extolling her boyfriend's many virtues until our tea party eventually came to an end. You cannot be allowed to socialize any further. It is simply too dangerous, Justice said as soon as we returned to the dorm. He knew how to lip read, and what he had seen had apparently put him through agony again. He muttered under his breath that he would need to write yet another report to Ferdinand. Have I done something wrong, I asked. Lack of education, misunderstandings. The problem is more to do with your surroundings than you yourself. The most terrifying part is your own lack of awareness over what a dangerous bridge you are crossing. Something must be done at once, Justice said, looking entirely exhausted. My other retainers, none of whom knew how to lip read, watched with confused expressions. Well, I don't know what I've done, but sorry anyway. Oh, poor mine. She has no clue what the heck she did. Okay, I think I'm gonna... do I want to stop? Yeah, I'm gonna have to stop. I'll see you guys next time.